Good evening and welcome to CanHammer, your stop for Warhammer 40k from the Grey White North. Today's episode is 248. We're going to cover the CanHammer Team Tournament 2024. Done and dusted. As usual, I'm your host, Chris, at CanHammer Chris on Twitter and Instagram, and I'm joined by my co-host.
I'm very, very tired.
That's your name now?
Yes.
Hi, tired. I'm Chris.
That is my state of being.
Hey. Well, Logan's also here, also tired.
And also joining
sick.
us, we have Logan. Logan and Francois.
You can see how this week has been.
Yeah, we finished the CanHammer Team Tournament, and we'll get to that later in the show. But for those that don't know, I'm excited. It was the largest team event in Canadian history. We had 22 8-player teams, 176 players. If you add in the coaches, we hit over 180. This was a real achievement.
I believe it's not just the largest team event in Canada. I believe largest period, because I don't think the big ones out west have been above that. Like Wet Coast was 160 something, I think. So don't quote me on that, but it may also be just the largest overall. Definitely largest teams.
Yeah, and cool. We have room to grow. We have momentum. We sold out in 20 seconds. So it's definitely, it felt really good this year. We're finally starting to, I don't know if people are aware of this, Darren left the organization to go and start a podcast, Two Asians, One Board. People don't think that that's real, but he did, and that's a board game podcast.
It is 100% real. Whether it's a good idea is a different conversation, but it's 100% real.
Well,
I just want to put it out there. There's no hard feelings. He just wanted to do board game content, and that's where he plays board games. And it was not a thing. It was just, people just grow old and play board games.
Historicals or board games, right? Is one of the two.
I like the occasional board game as well, but not to that extent. It's an interesting podcast, so if you missed Aaron, go have a listen. And don't look at the video that the name of his podcast is based off of. Okay, so we'll get to CanHammer Team Tournament at the end of the podcast. We'll start off with, obviously a tournament done and dusted. There's a lot of hobby progress that had to be done. So Logan, did you have to do anything for this, or what have you been working on?
I had to paint one model for CanHammer Teams. So I actually borrowed an army for it, which was great. No, most of my hobby stuff has been spent working on my Death Guard and Eldar. Eldar army is almost completely done for everything I've purchased. I think I have just the links and a unit of Rangers left to paint, and then the collection will be done just in time for probably another order to arrive next week.
So you're moving back into the Eldar? Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, looking at that, I mean, our focus, well, my focus anyway, but certainly for my team is almost explicit or almost specifically on team events going forward, because we have so many coming up. We got Breath Weapon, then we got Stud, and we'll talk about some of these later on. So the only singles event I'm really looking at coming up is Bloodbath, which maybe we can talk about today. I don't know. But with that, yeah, I mean, Eldar is something I've been playing a lot. I really enjoy it, and I just love painting that army. It's such a different scheme from all the other stuff, so it's fun having some bright poppy colors instead of just green and Agrax Earthshade or flat white on my Tau.
So you guys are going to Stud as an 8-man?
That is the current plan. We just started talking about it yesterday.
Yeah, I might have picked up the Blunt Force ticket yesterday. Nice. And guess who's coming out of retirement for that event?
Given where it is.
Also plays Eldar.
Ricky?
No. Kieran.
Oh, nice. I haven't seen
one
that
of the
ages.
original CanHammer guys way back in the day.
Good to see him.
Cool. So pass on to you, Francois. Did you paint 8, 9 armies? Or I know you carried them there. So
So I brought armies for other people, and I borrowed someone else's army. It was very, very strange. First time in my life that I play a tournament with models that are not mine. A full army. I've borrowed one model here and there, but borrowing the full army was new. I don't know if that's growth of a player as a player or not, but we'll count it. The wonderful Zach Prinsloo lent me his Death Guard because mine weren't quite ready, and didn't want to be rushed. So actually, I didn't paint anything for CanHammer Teams. I am still painting the GSC. Just yesterday, I finished 5 Aberrants and 5 Acolytes.
Awesome.
So you've got 100 plus models painted from that army?
I've got 3 full combat patrols done. So that's 9D plus the trucks. Yeah, I think 9D infantry plus the trucks. Yeah.
Speed paints are doing work.
Oh yeah, and it looks good.
It does.
That's why I keep doing it. It's motivating because the end result is actually amazing.
Okay.
Swear we're not sponsored.
Yeah, no. So we got some upcoming events we just want to shout out quickly before we move on. So we have Capital Clash, May 18 at the Red Dragon. I should let you guys know CanHammer, the event, CanHammer Team Tournaments, was sponsored by Red Dragon as well. They're our primary sponsor, so it's amazing. We have WTC Team Canada fundraisers. So I want to talk a little bit about these. Is Phil, who's a friend of ours in Ottawa. We've incorporated the WTC team for Canada into Canadian tabletop. I can't say it right. I don't want to get made fun of. So some kind of corporate name that's very generic. And we're running RTT fundraisers. If you're interested in running one in your area, please let us know. There is a pack already made. There's a charging structure and how the money gets distributed to the team, and all that's already taken care of. It all goes into a neutral business account, so there is no risk of embezzlement. I guess there's always a risk of embezzlement, but not in this case.
No doubt that you've said it.
Well, that's part of the reason why we incorporated was to A, give receipts, and B, to have like public ledgers in private, like in a public. It's not public, like you can't go and take money out of it, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And so we're running one at the Red Dragon. There's also a plethora of other stores that are getting on board with this, and all proceeds go to the WTC team to kind of make it more competitive, right? When you're bringing like support staff and stuff like that, it's definitely very helpful, and we appreciate that. So that's June 8th at the Red Dragon, and there's other ones at like La Abyss and a few other stores. BWG, Ottawa 40K Teams, that's run by Jeremy. It's Breath Weapon Gaming, which is Jeremy, Dan, and Nick Blackburn. It's in June. We're going.
We'll be there.
All of us are going. 2 separate teams, though. Logan's on.
Yeah, I'm not one of the cool kids.
I believe they're at 17 teams now. There's 16 on BCP, but Stud confirmed recently they were coming, so it's 17. And there's a local Merc team on standby if they end up at an odd number. So I think we're looking at minimum 18 teams now of 8-mans, which is exciting. That's another huge event.
That's huge. That's like awesome. Amazing. Yeah, for year one. Like, it's like it just shows how. I remember when we first started doing the CanHammer Teams event, we did like the initial one, like was it 2014, and it was like nobody even knew what team play was unless you listened to like European podcasts, and and it was like people would criticize the FAQ and criticize it was like everywhere, and then now they're like the premier events that everybody seems to want to go to, so that's pretty amazing. And then we have the, as we said, Stud and Snotling what was it, GT? Now it's an 8-player team event, September 28th, 29th in Kitchener, which is the weekend after Dallas. So and a lot of the killers ain't going to be there.
Well, also my wife's birthday, so no way I can go to that despite how many times you ask me, Chris.
I'm going to ask you every day for the next
I know.
I got lucky. My wedding anniversary is the weekend before. So
yeah, what Chris is referring to there is the Champions Cup in Dallas, which is the FLG team event. It's going to be like 500 plus players, that one. It's absolutely massive.
Wow.
And yes, some of the Red Dragon is sending a team. Dan is sending a team. I don't know if he's filled it yet, but I know he's got his ticket. Team Quebec is sending a team, so it should be exciting. I'm going on stat check with Jeremy. At least that's the plan for now. So it should be cool.
Yeah, and I didn't want to go to Dallas because it's too close to Capital City, and so now I get to go to Kitchener, which was amazing because I was getting worried about having an empty month.
It's about the same travel time as the funny part.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, if you're flying versus yes.
Yeah. Don't drive to Dallas.
And it was exciting for us because we're able to get because of half our team is splitting, we're able to get some of the OG guys that maybe haven't played and get them kind of out of their basements and onto the tabletop, like Kieran and Max, I believe, is coming down. And so it should be a lot of fun. We'll go into news. There's kind of 2 big news. You guys kind of covered a little bit, but the Orc and Custodes codexes both went up for pre-order. We'll cover those when they come out. We've played a few games.
Logan and I did a primer on the leaks, which did turn out to be accurate. So it's exciting times for Orc players.
Yeah, I have hopes for Custodes if maybe the points are like, if you take away that many abilities from them, maybe it could turn into like a golden Swarm or something.
I think for both of these codexes, custodians are not as bad as the internet says, and orcs are not as good as the internet says. Yes, they're two extremes, but they're not quite as far. Like the orc codex, I don't think anyway. Don't yell at me if I'm wrong. I don't think is a new like release Votan or Leviathan Nids or Liquefier Drukhari. I don't think it's that bad.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I remember, Chris, you were around for this as well when Green Tide came out in 7th edition. It was almost exactly the same mechanics. It was 100 plus boys, 5-up invul all the time. And it was a really good stat check. Like, this is sort of before teams took off. But I think it's going to be amazing in teams. I think Bully Boys might be the more singles friendly list, unless you're one of those crazy people that likes Unending Swarm or something like that.
Or ordered 24 grot tanks on a whim.
Yeah, that is also.
I may have done
option.
that last weekend. So
but yeah,
24
I think
tanks will show up. Yeah,
there are things that can answer these stat checks, so it's going to be interesting to see how it goes. I think orcs are in that great like 4-1 at a 5-round tournament kind of list with the Green Tide. But remains to be seen. I agree, not super crazy overpowered, but at the same time, I'm over here on my other screen mashing refresh, waiting to see if the new data slate drops while we're podcasting today.
Yeah, and that being said, like the Green Tide is interesting. I think a lot of things in the meta now are geared toward, like if you look at the armies at CanHammer team holistically, and maybe I'm off a little bit, the model count is a lot lower. There's a lot more elite units, a lot of activation lock. And so that's why maybe Green Tide might have a play temporarily until the meta catches up, because, earlier on in this edition, people could just delete hordes, right? And then as kind of hordes have disappeared, when you look at what's out there, like, mind you, Sisters will still give them a run for their money, but I think it could be something interesting. So that's really cool. The other thing is, why don't you talk about the Emperor's Children, Logan?
Yeah, so there's not too much detail yet on this. So I think it's Lucius and Noise Marines are being dropped from the Chaos Space Marines Codex, which is coming out presently. That has been confirmed. And in place of that, we're getting an Emperor's Children index, which is pretty cool. It's like the one part of Chaos I've never collected, but it's great to see. And sort of what this hints at very strongly, if not directly says, is there's going to be an Emperor's Children Codex at some point. There's been a lot of speculation online, lots of videos and stuff, so who knows when it's going to come out, probably quite a ways out, but really exciting to see them sort of start branching off on this stuff, as opposed to, the Space Marine problem where you have 150 data slates or data sheets in a single book. So splitting these off should be pretty fun. So excited to see what comes with that.
Oh, sounds good. So we'll get on to what people are probably here for, to hear the who's who and who won and who lost of CanHammer Teams 2024. So for those of you that don't know, we kind of talked about earlier, it was a 22 8-player team event. We did not do pods this year, and I think that was a question that I got a lot on the weekend. And the reason is, if you do pods, you require a 6th game. And now a lot of the American events and some Europeans, they'll go to like a 3-day format where they'll do 6 games or something like that. But in Canada, we've had, I'd say, limited desire or adoption of Friday events.
I think
it's cultural, or
I think it's, so travel is more of an issue for us than Europeans, but same as the Americans. So I think for us, it's just we need a culture change, and I think big events may want to take a leap and be the change they want to see. But of course, that's scary, right? Because if you do that Friday game, and then because of the Friday game, people decide not to come, that can be dangerous. But I think if you did a 1-3-2 and had the Friday game like late in the day to let people like travel that morning, it would be 100% doable. Speaking, of course, as someone who lives 30 minutes from the venue.
Yeah, the travel time is certainly something that's come up a lot. There was a lot of discussion around this for another event that was running that was going for that type of split. I think they were aiming for 1-2-1, 1-2-2. I think was the original setup for Breath Weapon.
For Breath Weapon, the original setup was 1-2-2, and a lot of the Toronto teams were uncomfortable with that, so they changed it to a 3-2 just so that they could sell more tickets.
Yeah. I know one of the other aspects.
But CanHammer teams selling out in 20 seconds. I think if you did a 1-2-2 or 1-3-2, you would still sell out.
Yeah, you might.
We wouldn't do that though. Like the way that I thought about it,
2-2-2?
I would prefer to do, if it was an ideal world, then I could magically know we would sell out. I would do 2-2-2 and do longer
like WTC.
Rounds.
That would mirror WTC. 2 games a day, 4-hour rounds. For 8-man teams, that is the ideal format, because, well, we'll get to there when we talk about our games, but time was an issue in one of my games, even for me, who's a fast player and was playing against a friend who we understand each other. We have a shorthand, right? So that was still a concern, and I know that I wasn't the only one.
Yeah. One of the other things to call out real quick on a potential 3-day move for any event, and keep in mind, I don't know any of the financials for CanHammer stuff. I'm not involved in actually running the events, but the venue cost is dramatic for most places up here that can actually support that kind of thing. So as soon as you move to 3 days, you're potentially incurring a lot more costs because you now have to set up the day before that other day. So you're adding a full extra day rental in a lot of cases for it. So it is a pretty big risk to jump to that if you're not quite convinced.
And then you got to start looking at player costs because like the way that CanHammer teams is just there's no mystery here. I run an event that is an event that I want to go to, right? And so that's how we formulate things. We also like take feedback and stuff, but and we provide lunch all the days, and that was like important for us when we founded it and moved it to the UI more for Capital City. We founded that is we wanted all the attendees to eat in one place together, have like a shorter, somewhat healthier lunch with like salads and stuff so that people then just feel better. They hang out. There's no rush. And we wanted to build that environment. And yeah, if you add a third day, you're like adding a third lunch, right? Which then makes the ticket prices higher. And
yeah, the catering is expensive.
Everything's expensive nowadays. But yeah.
But people would be shocked at what the catering cost actually is.
The food was great this year, by the way. It was really
thank
good.
you. Yeah, Saturday was amazing. Like chicken parm and like salad, as we said. And then we had hamburgers and salads as well on the Sunday with drinks. And I remember when we used to have to count the cookies and be like, when we were really small and like the budget was tight, we'd be like, hey, everybody gets one cookie first.
And Jason would police them, hand them out.
And then now we have it was like unlimited desserts. Like they had so many leftovers. So it was pretty crazy. We had a lot of players from across North America, I would say. Not as much as maybe we would like. And a lot of that, I think, just goes down to the fact that we sell out so quickly that if you're not a well-established team that's already aware of the event and in the area, 20 seconds doesn't give a lot of international teams or other people a chance to register. And I know that was a problem this year for a lot of people is, we sold out so quickly and our wait list kind of grew so quickly that even though we expanded one row into the wait list, it was still, once you lose that initial momentum, people are just like they've moved on and signed up for a different event, right? So
yeah, so I guarantee you, if there was enough room that the event didn't sell out immediately, you'd get some American teams.
Yeah, which is sad. It's sad, but it's also like a victim of your own success.
Well, yeah, exactly.
It's cool. We actually got 8 golden tickets to the World Championships of Warhammer this year to give away, which was amazing. And a huge shout out to Joe from War Games Live. He came up. He came from Europe, flew home, and then came up to stream a little event up in Canada, which he normally does all the really big super majors in the US. So it was really exciting to see him there. And we did new terrain maps this year on half the table, which had the CanHammer logo and all the lines. So it even we pushed it a bit further this time. We had objective marker placings.
Oh, that was amazing.
All the secondaries. Yeah. What did you got? You like that?
I love that.
We may or may not be getting a group buy going for some of those. That was 3D Forgeworks was the folks who made those, right?
Yeah, if you want a CanHammer mat, you should have let us know, Logan.
Well, my whole team's trying to buy them.
Okay. Are you guys doing CanHammer ones, or are you guys doing like your own club?
We may do our own club, but I will follow up with you about that for stream purposes.
Yeah, because I want to buy more. Like, let's be honest with you. Once you play on a mat where the deployment zones and objective markers are already present, it's really hard to go back to one without.
Good. Maybe wait until the next GT pack. Just make sure that those things haven't changed.
Yeah.
You know what? That being said, though, for 3D Forgeworks, the price that he charges for those vinyl mats, they're not the neoprene ones. It is easier to justify, buying new mats every edition now. Right. They also store in like the neoprene ones are beautiful and they last forever. But as you said, if you have to reprint them or if you have to cut them, it's like annoying. These vinyl mats store in like little tiny tubes. So it's like way less space. They're way lighter. And if they get damaged or ruined, it's less of an impact on the event's like budget, right?
Yeah, the customized ones like list cost are 115 Canadian with free shipping.
These ones?
Yes, they're crazy cheap.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, compared to the neoprene ones. So like excellent value. Very,
Yeah, so
very
like you can
impressed.
invest that every edition, right?
Yeah.
Is what I'm kind of getting at. And they looked great, and like it was awesome because I watched this Joe stream from the judges booth a little bit, and like we had the Wayland Utani WTC terrain, and he put CanHammer logos on everything. So like you would see a CanHammer logo in every camera angle. It just felt so professional and really well done. I know Wayland Utani, they used to put more logos on, and they've toned it down a little bit. I think the balance they found now between branding and their terrain pieces is really nice. So, that's cool. So yeah, check out War Games Live, please. And if you've never seen him before, send him a super chat and say we saw you at the CanHammer team tournament, or they plugged you on CanHammer, and maybe we can get him back next year or this summer. So what's a couple things? What makes CanHammer team tournaments unique compared to other ones? To WTC atmosphere, which I think is going away now that there's all these 8-man now. There's all these team events now, so we don't really have that. One thing that we did differently this year is we had a mix of terrain. So we had 4 player placed tables and 4 WTC per row. We had initially done this just because we used to be all player placed and we're transitioning to WTC, and we didn't want to do it like overnight just in case the terrain changes and stuff like that. We also wanted to recoup some of the costs on our player place that we are still in the negative on due to some shady business dealings. Not shady, but yeah, whatever. And then so we got a lot of mixed feedback on that, if I'm being honest. Some people don't like setting up WTC tables, by the way, and some people don't like player place tables. So
I'm not a fan of the player place.
Because like setting up those WTC every round is effort, right? And it can be a lot for people that are more casual as well.
It doesn't feel like it to me because I've probably set up 100 WTC tables now, so it's just like it goes very quick for me. But it is an added layer of admin to the round, which you can already have. The rounds are already not 4 hours long, right? So if you're spending 5-10 minutes of your time just setting up the terrain. My advice for anyone setting up a WTC table, by the way, is to not measure every single piece of terrain. Place the objectives down, then place the terrain relative to the objectives on your map. And then after that, you can readjust and check a few things to make sure you've got the angles proper and the distances between ruins proper. But that goes so much faster than trying to measure every corner of every ruin.
Yep. And don't let great get in the way of good enough.
Correct.
Placing WTC terrain. Does it really matter if it's a millimeter to the left or right? No, it does not matter. Please start your game. Another thing is that like we would recommend when you get your table pairings, because there's like 8 of you, if each team, when they show up to do pairings, if they just take 4 of their guys that maybe don't need to be there for pairings and just set up half the boards each team, that could definitely save you some time in the future. But, walking around, there'd be people being like, oh, I screwed up the player place and I got like an angle on me. Or there'd be people that were like, guys, just give me player placed. I don't want to set up one of those tables. So I heard it all, right?
Yeah.
So
I do want to say shout outs to Team Quebec for setting up the terrain for WTC stuff every round for their opponents. That was awesome.
That's amazing.
It is a huge time saver, right? Like ignore the player place or otherwise 3 hour, 15-minute rounds. You're probably 2 hours and 55 by the time you finish pairings and actually get to your tables. You talk through your lists. You're down to maybe 250. Set up terrain. You're down to 240, 235. And all of a sudden that round can go a lot quicker than you think it does. So there's a lot of logistics that go into larger team stuff that sort of it's easy to breeze over.
That said, setting up the player placed also takes a while.
Yes.
I don't know that it's any faster than setting up a WTC table, to be honest.
Some people it is, some it isn't. Yeah.
It just eats clock in a different way, right? You're either pulling out of round time, or you're pulling out of individual player time for it.
Yeah, and while we're on the topic of player placed, I really miss the fixed middle because having that wide open middle there's one game where I was staring at 3 land forts on the line on the middle of the table, and I was like, well, I guess I can't come out now.
Did you win that game, Francois?
I did, but
yeah, then shut the up. No,
I did win that game. Yes.
The open middle did make for some very interesting dynamics. Yeah.
Oh, of course. And there's the standard things. One of the things that some people liked about it is that they could basically take an army that was like abusive in shooting and really lean into that and then set You could be like,
It adds a
it adds
layer
an
of
element, but it adds a layer of
strategy.
tactics as well to it.
I 100% agree in both pairings and list selection. To a degree that I wonder if it's not even like too much, because the combinations are already almost infinite on pairing and player and table choice for just WTC tables. Now you throw in I have a list that wants player placed, but it doesn't want to play against that, so I can't first defend with it. So my first defender has to take a WTC table to make sure there's a player placed left later in the round, and it goes like I wasn't in charge of
that sounds
pairings.
amazing.
Thankfully, but my brain was breaking trying to follow all that along. Shout out to Riley for doing all that for us, because I could not figure it out.
Yeah, we definitely had that as a consideration. Well, we can talk about it later on, but we certainly had those things as considerations for us, and it adds some fun flavor, but a lot of complexity.
Yeah, and I like playing 1-8 WTC. It's really great. I did find though this edition, there'd be like a light, heavy, medium WTC table, and I would kind of always jokingly say it's 8 heavy tables because
right now they're the same basically.
Yeah, they're very similar with the infinite hot. Now there is differences with staging and what you can get away with, but they are very safe tables, right? Which is nice.
Yeah.
So I'm going to throw this out there just as a thought-provoking question. One of the cool things we saw at Alpine Cup was some alternative layouts using just WTC terrain that were slightly lighter versions of the WTC layouts. Those could be pretty cool to experiment with. Not specifically for CanHammer events, but just in general. If you're out there and you think the WTC stuff is a little too heavy, but you're not a huge fan of the GW layouts, take a look at what Alpine Cup ran. There's some really, really cool setups that have similar blocking line of sight, but don't have these giant kill zones like the GW stuff.
Actually, on that note, FLG is also moving to fixed layouts now, which is massive because they're like the big shaker and mover in the US, and they were the first ones to large scale use player placed, and the fact that they're moving away from it means that fixed layouts are now the way to play 40K across the world, which is super great. They're different layouts, but player placed seems to be going the way of the dodo, at least for the big events across the world. Yep. And so I haven't looked at the FLG fixed layouts. I know they published them a couple of days ago. I was planning on taking a look, but my week got away from me. Maybe at some point later we could talk about those. Yeah,
and like they're just whatever. We don't know what we're going to do in the future, but we could even just do our CanHammer terrain.
Oh yeah, fixed with CanHammer
layouts. Yeah. And I know that's encouraged by the NTL to set those layouts out. And then somebody came up to me and was like, you guys should do 2 CanHammer layouts, 2 GW layouts, and then 4 WTC layouts. And they said it would just be like all the tournament layouts that we do and just like have it like in one row. So there's definitely a mix on what we should do for terrain. And like we have to go by logistics ultimately, but that's a good idea as well. And I don't know if we'll go that direction or not, but one of the things too Jason is really into is doing WTC terrain, which is the 10 ruins, and then doing player placed with those 10 ruins. So he says that might be an interesting way to set up tables, but I don't know. I prefer the layouts personally.
I'm highly skeptical of that idea, but we can talk about it later.
I am as well, but he's gung ho. So shout out to Jason. So before we move on to your guys and what you took to the event, I did want to do a few thank yous and shout outs for the event, specifically to Andrew Atkins and Jason Sparks, who ended up doing a lot of work for the event kind of behind the scenes, and they don't get a lot of the credit because they're not up at the front giving out awards like I get that honor. And so just without those two guys, the event could never materialize. And I wanted to give a special shout out to Phil and Will Paul for helping us set up and tear down during the event. It was fantastic. Thanks for your help, guys. So I'll hand it off to you. So we'll go with you first, Logan. What team are you on and what did you guys take?
Was on Team Big Dice Energy, and unlike the last team event, I actually wrote down the names of my team members for this. So we had Jean, Phil, Alice, Arlana, AJ, Charlie, Zach, and our coach Braden, who is a new addition to our group. And that I will say, just very quickly, having a coach for 8-man teams is an absolute game changer. I've coached on 5-mans before and had not appreciated how much value it added doing that. With 8-mans, take that, and it's like exponential growth the more people you have. So huge thank you to Braden. But if you're doing team stuff, definitely take a look at having a non-player coach. But yeah, for it, so our makeup was Grey Knights, Tyranids, Demons, and a very unique Demons list. Tau, Black Templars running big Crusader blocks, not the planes. A list with 5 Catans, which was a lot of fun. Orcs, and then I was running Custodes for a last hurrah there with a pretty bog standard list: Triple Wardens, Guard, Draxus, Trajan, Blade Champ, Shield, like the Jack Harpster list, basically. Uh, so, prefacing all this, I want to say I had 5 absolutely fantastic games against 5 wonderful people. As 40K these days continues to be a very positive experience up here. So lots and lots of fun. You want to do sort of round by round walkthroughs here, or how do we want to structure this today?
Yeah, let's do Big Dice Energy first, and then we'll go to Francois and do his. I think that way it's less jumping.
Yeah. Sounds good. So round 1 for Big Dice Energy, we played into Maple Leaf Gaming, and we were actually on the stream table, which was a lot of fun. So we had Zach and thank you. We had Zach and his opponent on the main stream, and I believe we had Phil on the Patreon table. I need to go watch those. And also another plug for War Games Live. He runs 2 tables, one that's on the live stream, another one that's for Patreon, so you get double the content. With that, I played into Aaron, who was running Space Wolves as Gladius. So reasonably standard, I guess, ish list for running Gladius, but with Thunderwolf Cav as well, and Bjorn, which was a lot of fun. Really fun game for it. First round was supply drop, as I recall, so disappearing objectives. Aaron unfortunately had a bit of a misplay and moved towards the wrong objective at the end, and she spent turn 5 trying to recover that, and actually had a really good shot at getting across, but a hero, I think it was my shield captain, doing a heroic intervention, managed to take out an entire squad of assault intercessors that was on its way to somewhere else. So really fun game, though. Finished 17-3 for me running the Custodes, and a pretty strong round win for Big Dice Energy on that one as well. Second round, we played into GTA 40K. It was a very strong team this year. And again, we had a really fun round into everyone. I played into Chris's Tyranids running Invasion Fleet. Took a slight win in this one, so 12-8 for me. I do want to give a huge shout out to Chris's Tyranid collection. He had 2 actual original armor cast exocrines for his list, which are the models I used to drool over when I was a kid, 20, 25 years ago, looking at those things on eBay. Like, I wish I could afford these. So it was really cool to see those. But overall, our team took a loss on this round, unfortunately. So Operation Submarine started at that point. Round 3, we played into Bottom Table Titans. I paired into Nick's Orcs for this, running a whole bunch of knobs in trucks, and that was a very interesting matchup with Custodes. It is not a good one for the Orcs at all, especially on Ritual, where I can just sort of sit there and say, come at me. There were a few things that just sort of sealed the fate for Nick's Orcs, such as Mozrog charging into a unit of Wardens and doing 0 wounds, which was unfortunate for him. So that finished as a 19-1 for me. Big round win for Big Dice Energy. And I want to give, again, a special shout out to this team. So Davey from the Other Guys 40K podcast is on this team, who I've talked about when I played him at BPO. The running joke for this is that our pairings had 7 games and 1 date. Because AJ and Davey played, and you could literally see hearts in AJ's eyes at the end of that game. He is in love with that man. So that was some fun big bro energy on that. Round 4, we paired into Team Quebec, or Équipe Quebec 40K. I don't know how to say 40K in French. But paired into Bruno's Grey Knights, and that was a lot of fun. I haven't rolled dice with Bruno since we were actually on the same team for AdeptCon back in 2016, where I think we came in like 10th or 11th or something in teams. So it was really great to be able to sit down and catch up, because every other time we've run into each other, he's been running an event, so he's too busy to chat. Anyway, really fun game, massive swing last turn. We were sitting at a pretty steady 10-10, and this is one of those fun ones where not having the fixed center on player placed makes for some really interesting dynamics, because as Custodes, I couldn't just sit on an objective. So I had to start feeding units into the middle to try to deny points and everything. And the final score going into the bottom of turn 5 was a 10-10. And I needed 1 model to live on the middle to deny overwhelming force, area denial, and I had screened off another objective to make sure he couldn't deep strike on it. But I had, and this is entirely my own fault to be clear, misunderstood what the OC on Terminators was. I didn't realize the banner gave them an extra one, same as Custodies. So he was able to get 3 guys on one of my objectives with 3-inch deep strike, get 5 points there. Trajan dies by 1 wound after the entire army shoots at his unit, so I lose area denial, and he maxes overwhelming force. So finishes 7-13, but super fun game. Lots of fun with Bruno. And unfortunately,
just to interject that you got to put one of those models on the middle, man.
Yeah, that was exactly what I missed. Is I had just off, and it was one of those things as well where I'd say, yeah, my idea here is to screen you out 3 inches. If I had even said that, we would have looked at it and said, no, you can't do that. But I just sort of ran with it, and that came back to bite me. And he even said, going to turn, I think you're going to find out that you moved wrong. Like, okay, cool, I'll own it. So good learning opportunity with that. But yes, a round loss. Francois is shaking his head at me. Round loss for BDE on that one. So we're going into the last round 2-2. And round 5, we played against Wargame Warriors Green from down, I think, in the Hamilton area. Really, really fun matchup for everyone. We all walked away very happy with our opponents and our game, despite some misunderstandings in one of them, which got resolved amicably, and everything was good after that. But I paired into Anthony Fung in a Custodian's mirror, and I will very openly say I got wildly outplayed in this. I learned a lot in this, a lot of mechanics I just haven't hit before in terms of reserve play. Pair that in with player placed as well, and I got schooled. So that was a 5-15 for me. Really fun game. Anthony was a joy to play against. And despite my blunder, we did manage to walk away with a round win on that. So BDE finished 3-2 in this event, which, transparently, I don't think we're super happy with, but we're not overly upset about either. We were really hoping to push 4-1 and podium, which we would have with a 4-1 result. But it is what it is. We all improved as players. We all had 5 really fun games. So I think we're all happy in that regard. And that dropped us in for a 6th place finish overall.
So I do want to take a step back. What kind of to go back to your game with Anthony? What exactly? Give us some insight as to what your mistakes were, what kind of play he did, just for people listening. I know it might not apply to the new book, but a lot of this stuff's pretty generic.
Yeah, so the fun stuff with that game is a lot of the mechanics that he was able to take advantage of are things that are sort of army agnostic. So we were running very similar lists. He was running 3 units of guard, 1 unit of wardens. I was running 3 units of wardens, 1 unit of guard. So he had a couple more sisters units, which didn't make any difference in the game. But otherwise, we were exact mirror. So the big thing, the smart thing he did was to reserve his tanks, and he wound up having bottom of turn as well. So he had full control over to where his tanks were going to come on the board and what they were going to see with it. So the first thing that sort of swung the game a little bit, but not hugely, was I had opted to screen one part of the board rather than another with my assassin, Calixus, to deny a rapid for his Trajan unit, and wound up playing a bit more defensively than perhaps I should have, which allowed him to get in, take off a tank, and just hold an objective with Trajan's unit for most of the rest of the game, which I sort of knew was going to happen one way or another. But anyway, that was one part of it. But yeah, having the tanks in reserve just meant, especially with player placed as well, he could come on anywhere and have guaranteed line of sight with just about no cover to whatever he wanted to shoot, which in that scenario was a tank. So was able to pick that up. Whereas even just having cover can make a massive difference. AP3 goes to AP2. If you can block line of sight from one of them, again, a massive difference. So good insight into some better play with that. And then the last thing on it was just my math was wildly off. I had not appreciated how impactful -1 to hit is on some of the math for wardens specifically, because you don't get the reroll to wound, right? So I had charged in, and at the time, it felt like the numbers were way off for me. So I had 1 unit of wardens and my shield captain that went into Trajan's unit. I go in, I don't use -1 to hit, it doesn't matter, but pop my feel no pain there, thinking, okay, cool, I control this objective. You don't get to reroll wounds. I maybe lose 2 guys. No, it turns out the average is actually losing 4. And sure enough, I lost 4. And another area, charged Blade Champ and the wardens into some guard. He heroics in another unit of guard, which again, smart. I had missed the ranges on it. I think I rolled hot on the charge, so I wouldn't have been able to deny it. And the intervene itself wasn't the problem. I split my attacks too aggressively. I was thinking, okay, cool, yeah, you don't have feel no pains, whatever. Again, didn't account for the -1 to hit, and actually wound up doing exactly average, which is killing 2 models in each unit, which was not enough for it to matter, and got wiped. So fair bit of just math hammer fundamentals that are good to know. So if you know those breakpoints and what that math looks like in some of these matches, that's incredibly helpful. And again, math in my head was just wrong on it. And otherwise, just as with a lot of 40K, the movement phase is where you win or lose the game, and that is absolutely where Anthony won this game.
Oh, sounds really amazing. And yeah, you can't underestimate the -1 damage as well in the mirror match, because that skews a combat immensely in either direction.
That was a big one as well, in my favor, fortunately, in that case. But yeah.
Yeah, because you had the captain. Yeah. No, good stuff. Sounds like you had a great time, and I'm glad you got to have your last hurrah with the custodes before they change fundamentally. So
yeah, they went back in a box, and I think they're living in Charlie's closet now.
Oh, they went back to Charlie's house. Makes sense. The Eldar players just fighting at the doors of your brain to come out.
Exactly.
Okay, Francois, we'll take it away. So you played for which team? I forgot.
Yes, I wonder. I was, of course, playing for Blunt Force Trauma. And before I start talking about our event, I want to take a minute to thank you, Chris, for your sacrifice, because, of course, Blunt Force Trauma is Chris's team, and we've been playing together on that team for years now, and it was very strange to not have you there playing. But someone needed to run the event, and for an event this large and this prestigious, you cannot run and play. That's just not something that's either feasible or frankly desirable, because then you introduce conflicts of interest and everything. And so Chris left our team chat for the duration, separated himself from the team to make sure that he could be the tournament organizer. And I know it was hard, Chris, but the entire community thanks you, because otherwise there would not have been a CanHammer teams.
Yeah, no, it is tough too, because even it's even hard as a staff, because when you guys are busy, I have time. Well, I have very little time, but when you guys are playing, that's the time when I'm walking around doing ref calls. And then when you guys are all chilling, hanging out, that's the time when I'm working and getting making sure results are good. And it was really weird. Yeah. Cause it was I feel like I didn't really hang out with any of you at all. And some of it was on purpose, right? I was also very neutral.
Yeah, for that weekend, you can't be part of the team that weekend because you have to be the tournament organizer and just switch hats, and it's important that separation remains. But I know it was hard, and it was weird for us too. We had mostly the same core, right, that we've been playing with for a long time, with a couple new additions, but not your absence there was definitely felt. Thankfully, Jason Sparks took up the mantle of captain, and we collectively kind of just ran ourselves. We're used to this now. We've been doing it a long time. 7 of our 8 members are current or past WTC attendees, so 8-man teams is something that we're all very comfortable with, which is also why we didn't feel the absence of a coach as much, although I will agree with Logan that having a coach is a life changer in 8s. Shout out to the Equipe Quebec coach who brought me water in the last round. That guy was awesome. But for our team, we had the wonderful Team Dietlif on Eldari, the amazing Raleigh Tremblay on the Adeptus Sororitas, the incomparable Jeremy Atkinson on his Stormraven Ravenwings, and I should have not started doing that because I'm going to run out of adjectives before I get to the 8 player.
Did you prep this?
No, I did not. I was trying to wing it, and now I'm out of adjectives. The captain, Jason Sparks, on Grey Knights. Rhett Tremblay, Riley's brother, on Astra Militarum. Kier, the lovely Kier, I've missed that guy. It was nice to see him. He stayed at my house, so we got a chance to catch up and chat. That was wonderful. On Adeptus Custodes, Devin, the Overlord now, on Necrons. He did wonderful that weekend. And of course myself on Death Guard, or as I've taken to calling them, to quote Tim Penny, who was also there on Death Guard this weekend, the most blue-collar army of 40K. You get your lunch pail, you put your ham sandwich in it, you clock in, you clock out, you eat your sandwich, you clock back in, you clock back out, you go home, you get a beer, you sit on the couch, you watch Fox News, and you fall asleep. That's what it is like to play Death Guard at a Warhammer tournament. Death Guard is a very grindy army, and for the last 2 months, everyone has been telling me, do not play this army, it is not your style, you will hate it. And I've been saying, no, it's going to be amazing, I will do it, I am correct. Yes, I would like to apologize for specifically Tim and also Dickie, who have been telling me for months that was going to be a mistake. Now, don't get me wrong. I did fine. I hit my predictions. I provided a stable 10-10 to the team every round, which is what the army is designed to do. but it did not bring me as much joy as another army might. That said, I had a wonderful time at the event. I just wish I had brought my world leaders instead. But our first round was against the Mid-Table Terrors, a semi-local teams. They're at a lot of our events. Those guys are awesome. Good bunch of guys. I'm friends with most of them. And it was a very strong win for Blunt Force. My game was into Alex Baudouin, Necrons, who had one of the lists we shout out last podcast. He had the Tesseract Vault and Monolith Hypercrypt list, which I will say I do think double Monolith is better than Tesseract Monolith, but it still gave me a bit of a headache. The solution to that puzzle was to play bumper cars with rhinos on the vault all game, because it can't fall back and do things. So it's just like stuck in a corner shooting you, because it can shoot out of combat, of course, but kind of like stuck there and can't do anything. So I had a rhino just keep bumping it all game. And that was a 12-8 for the Death Guard. And as you'll see, there's a bit of a theme to how close all the games were for my event. But 12-8 for my Death Guard, the round as a whole, 123-37 for Blunt Force Trauma. That's a big score. We started, and Mid-Table Terrors is a good team. Spoiler alert: the teams we played finished second, third, fifth, seventh, and eighth, or something like that. Like everyone that we played was in the top 10. Round 2, moving on. If my BCP will decide to update, we played Team Chimera, which this was a team I wasn't really aware of. I'm not sure where they're from, probably somewhere in the GTA, because that's where everybody is from that I don't know. And we didn't know what we were getting into with them. They had a bit of a mech skew, where they had more lists with Logan tells me it's Barry area. Sorry for lumping you in with the Toronto guys if that's the case. That's a terrible insult, and I apologize for it.
I could be wrong.
Wherever they're from, it's a lovely bunch of guys. We just happen to not really know them personally. And they had a list with a lot of mech skew, so a lot of high toughness, high wound, difficult to kill vehicles, and that actually threw a wrench in our pairing strategy a little bit, because it was rather unusual for the overall meta of the event, which means that I ended up into something that I did not want to play. Triple Landford Votan on a player plays table. This is basically a double whammy of things I don't want to do. The Death Guard plays much better on WTC, and also they are not the best at killing tanks. But still, despite all of that, I managed to dig for all the loose coins in my pockets and get an 11-9 there, while the team got a 99-61 win. So another comfortable win on round 2, and everybody had fun. Great games all around. Round 3, things start to get real interesting. Because prior to the event, we had identified a few teams that we thought were like the best teams at the event, and we had prepared matrices for those teams. And of course, one of those teams was Stutter Scrub, because they're a strong team. They're an experienced team that have been doing teams forever, so they know what pairings are about and all that. And they have extremely good players on there, including Team Canada player, Team Canada coach, ex-Team Canada player. It's a stacked team, right? So for that one, we expected that it would be one of the more challenging rounds of the weekend. And for that round, I get paired into Richard Hughes, our lovely Canada head coach, Dicky, and his Custodes, which was wonderful because I have literally played that Death Guard Custodes matchup 7 or 8 times now. I've practiced it a lot, and I've practiced it against Dicky. So he and I had played that game before. We knew where this was headed. We started, we didn't even like deploy. We just chatted for a bit, caught up, and then we said, this is going to be a 10-10 no matter what we do. And then I said, I'll try and push for an 11, see if I can get it. I could not. It was a 10-10. We just did what we did. He played one of his tanks a little too far back, which gave me an opening to try and push. But even with the opening, I couldn't make it happen. Custodes into Death Guard is a pretty stable matchup. Generally, I've lost it before, but it's definitely on paper anyway pretty stable. So 10-10 for me, but then the rest of the team decided to go Super Saiyan, and we actually won 111-49, which against a team that ended up podiuming, if I'm not mistaken, and a strong team like that. Yeah, they got third. So that was an amazing result. We were very happy there. And that was one of the rounds where Jeremy's planes went terrorize people. But I especially want to shout out Devin that round because Devin was into Ridvin, Skari Martinez, and Necron's into Drukhari. And Ridvin thought that Necrons weren't so bad for him. He had said so prior to the event, and then Devin proceeded to 20-0 him, which is not something that happens to Ridvin very often at all. In fact, basically never. The man is a wizard at pulling extra points out of a matchup that you don't think are possible, but not this time. So that's why
that matchup's not like it. Like he can just take all those objectives, and the mission definitely.
I've played it from the Drukhari side, and my conclusion was this is unwinnable. But Ridvin has been saying that it was winnable, but well, not against Devin this time anyway. So we kept joking that Devin is now the true overlord. But that was another strong win. So that's day one in the bag, and we're feeling good. We go to dinner to Lone Star, Chris's favorite restaurant, and we start thinking about our pairings for our next day, which is going to be against GTA 40K. Another bunch of guys that we know relatively well. Their Dark Angels player, Adam, is the guy that beat me in Toronto, the one loss that I had in Toronto when I went a few weeks ago. I don't know. Time has no meaning. And he's a lovely guy. They also have Conrad, Ryan, a bunch of lovely people. I end up first defending and taking a little bit of a grenade in that they give me either their Drukhari or their Thousand Suns. The Drukhari, I think, is good for me. The Thousand Suns is bad. But looking at the rest of our matrix, we did not have a lot of people that felt comfortable playing into the Thousand Suns. So I just went, okay, if it helps the pairings down the line, I'll take the Thousand Suns. On this mission, depending on who goes first, I feel comfortable I can get a 10. Well, unfortunately, I went first, which in that mission against Thousand Suns is particularly bad. But still, lovely game. My opponent, Nick, was a wonderful opponent. We had a great game. We had fun. We laughed. And he won 13-7. So my first and only loss of the weekend came around round 4. So moving on. What? Yes, go ahead.
Quick interjection. Was Nick the one that had the fully converted corn?
Yes.
That army was
his
beautiful.
Army looked amazing. It's very funny because if you know anything about the lore, you know that Tzeentch and Khorne are basically the polar opposites. But his entire Thousand Suns army is Khorne converted. And it looks great. As Magnus is a combination. That model is great. It's a combination of the wings from a Helldrake, the body from a Bloodthirster, and the Bloodthirster is holding Magnus's head in his hand. Which is hilarious and also amazing. Looks amazing. So lovely game for me, but a loss. Still, again, the rest of the team did what they do, and we ended up with a 95-65 win. Another comfortable win, although I believe that's our lowest score of the weekend, I think. And then we go into the finals. At that point, we are the only team on straight wins. Everyone else has at least a draw. And we pair into Équipe Québec 40,000 or 40K, to answer your question from earlier, Logan.
Thank you.
I actually don't play 40K in French ever, except when I pair into another French speaker. So sometimes I also have those questions about words translate to. But for that one, I do know. Pairings go, again, fairly similar. I go down early again, as is the Death Guard way. Blue collar, going to blue collar. And I pair into Edouard, and I'm very happy with that pairing because Edouard is a lovely fellow. He's one of the WTC coaches. He was assigned to my pod of players last year at WTC, so he was the guy that I would confer with between rounds to discuss pairings and fill matrices. So Edouard and I know each other very well. We're friends. We understand each other very well. And I was like, oh, thank God. I'm so tired. I'm going to get to play the game in French, and I'm going to get to play against someone that I know very well, so it's going to be easy. Well, we ended up not playing the game in French because we got put on the Patreon stream for War Games Live, and Joe politely asked if we were okay playing in English so his Patreons could follow along. In hindsight, probably I should have just played in French anyway because we were both very tired and that game got kind of sloppy, and I know there's a couple rules mistakes that happened, nothing that impacted the final result in any significant way, but Edouard and I were talking after, and it's not the most tight game of 40K that either of us have ever played, and I think playing it in French might have helped us a little bit. So if you go and watch the War Games Live Patreon table and you pick up on some of the rules errors, we are aware of them. Edouard and I have already talked. There was a couple of sloppy, semi-significant things, but we talked about it. We're fine. We're happy. It did not impact the round, and also we were just very tired. So Edouard and I play. He's playing a CSM list that's designed to play on player placed. It's 30 accursed cultists. He builds a castle with a big ruin, puts Abaddon, the Hellbrute, in there, then strings out the cultists so they get sustained lethal 5s. It gets very crazy. The low point of that game for me, high point for him, is 2 singular models of accursed cultists, one shot a predator from full to 0. Which is wildly off the probability curve, but definitely can happen if you roll a 5 and a 6 for their attacks, giving them a total of 15 attacks, and then they explode lethal 5s. So, and they're only AP1, but then I failed too many saves and lost the Predator. That was turn 2, I want to say, and it shook me a little bit because I had a plan for that Predator. My next turn was all pre-planned in my head. I was like, I'm going to do this. It's going to be great. Then the Predator dies unexpectedly, and I go...
Well, what one could say, you had a plan to catch a Predator, right?
Yes, Chris, that's very funny. And so I did something that I'm actually proud of myself for doing, and I would recommend other people in the same situation do. I just put the clock on me and said, I need a break. And I went, splashed water on my face, went outside, took a walk, kind of reset, came back to the table, designed a new plan, kept playing. And that avoided the tilt, right? Because if I tried to force it and keep playing right away, I know I ran into Chris on the way, and I was like, two accursed cultists just picked up a Predator. What's happening? And then Chris laughed at me, which was very supportive of him.
I don't understand how that happened. Like, I'm like, that shouldn't happen.
It definitely shouldn't, but it's technically possible, and it did happen. So if you roll a 5 and a 6 for their attacks, and you roll a lot of exploding lethal 5s, and I roll under on the saves, like there's multiple breakpoints there, but it did happen. Anyway, so took the break, came back, and then started playing anew. Because Edouard's army has so many models and so many rolls to make, because those accursed cultists are 1,000,000 attacks, but also they have feel no pains. It makes taking damage on them very awkward. We actually got super low on time, which generally doesn't happen to me because I'm a fast player, but between the game pace, the fact that we were probably a little too chatty friendly at the beginning, and me taking a break on my time, but still it eats into the game. We were super low on time at the end, and we had to really rush our turns 4 and 5. And so it got a little less tight than I would like there at the end, but we're pretty sure we got the right result. 11-9 to me, just a squeaker of a win there. Thankfully, we realized afterwards our game did not matter because the round was already won. So Blood Force Drama wins the round 104-56 against Equipe Quebec in the finals, which gives us the tournament win for the second year in a row.
Ooh, so, congratulations.
Repeat champions. That was a wonderful event. Super fun.
Great. So that's fantastic. So yes, first place was Blunt Force Trauma. Second place was Team Red Dragon. Third place was Stud or Scrub. Best painted team was Team Quebec.
Who also finished 4th, so right up there.
Also finished 4th. Last place, because we have a very nice award for last place, was the B+ players, which is an Ottawa team. Congratulations, guys. Enjoy playing Blood Bowl. I really... that was my last Blood Bowl is one of my favorite games, so I was like, if you're getting last place, you're getting a Blood Bowl team for everybody on your team. Yeah.
Yeah, the pricing was great. I picked up another GSC Combat Patrol.
Nice.
Do you have critical mass now between? I have the maximum legal allowable numbers of infantry. Yes.
Now there's so looking at the final results, I wanted to. Oh, sorry, and favorite opponent was Team Hambone from Quebec. So
those guys are great. I love Hambone.
Yeah. I'm really, really happy for them. I was looking at strength of schedule because that was our third tiebreaker, and so I just wanted to quickly run through so strength of schedule is a weird one. It's hard to really know how it applies, but I think some people get a kick out of this. So the team with the hardest strength of schedule was actually Stutter Scrub throughout the weekend. The second highest strength of schedule was Blunt Force Trauma. And then the third place is a 2-way tie out of the top 6 only, because the rest, it's too much for me. But GTA 40K and Big Dice Energy were tied for third in strength of schedule.
Yeah, there are a lot of killers there this year. It's previous years for not just CanHammer teams, but most of the team events, you go, it's like, oh yeah, there's maybe 1 or 2 teams that we really need to worry about. And this year is like, no, there's like 5 or 6.
Yeah, we did matrices for 5 teams.
It's really cool to see not just the level up, but the level of interest in teams that's bringing folks out now.
Yeah, no, it was good, and like GTA 40K went on a really good run, and then got like thrown into the blender. But those guys are really up and coming. I know they practice as like a tight knit team, like all the time, hyper competitive. So I think they're on the cusp of a big win. I feel like that team.
I went to their event that they were running in Toronto a while back, and it was tight too. So I would definitely go back.
Yeah, it was definitely they impressed me this weekend, and the rest, it was just a great time. So yeah, so I guess good job on your second strength of schedule there, Francois. That's pretty good.
That's usually what happens when you win. You end up with a very high strength of schedule. Usually, sometimes in singles events, sometimes in singles events not so much if you have like a very lucky path, but in teams, generally those two correlate.
Yeah, and I guess like stud as well on the highest is pretty interesting, right? So
yeah.
Cool. So we wanted to go on. TO thoughts for the event. This felt weird because it went really smooth. Like, because teams have captains.
It's like you're shocked that there were no issues.
Like, I made rulings, like some of the big rulings, like Storm Ravens really rub people the wrong way.
The way that they work is somewhat counterintuitive, yeah.
And there's a lot of little things that, like, if you're like, I think if you're playing Storm Ravens, you really should nitpick yourself pretty hard, because like the way your wings move around ruins and stuff, like you really need to be cognizant of the fact that you're taking a unit that pushes the game in kind of enjoyment level. And so
if you're taking,
you don't want to take
Ravens,
liberties,
don't just shove them forward, and be very precise in your measurements.
And be very clear with your opponent, like this wing is moving over the top of the ruin, like because it makes a big difference. And they're kind of like, I wouldn't say they're like game, like they're on the edge though, and the way that they screen out the table is very oppressive in a lot of ways. And we did rule it even like in the favor of non-Storm Ravens, where you could measure angle to the model, so you could get even closer. But even that, like, you're talking like 10, 11-inch charges in a lot of the times.
And pure raw, there are directions from which you cannot come from reserves and legally charge them, which is very dumb. So
even in our ruling, you couldn't. Like, if you're coming in from a wingtip, you can't make that charge.
Yeah, so those models, I wouldn't say break the game, but they come close.
Another rule that I got called a lot for, that I thought you could just tell, is somebody come, hey Chris, can you cleanse 2 objectives with 1 unit? And that caught a lot of players, like shocked a lot of players, especially in the ritual. So I just want to like point, yes, you can do that, and it does feel weird, but you can do it. So
I've done it with gargoyles a lot.
Yeah.
But you would just see somebody come, hey Chris, I need a ruling. You can cleanse 2 objectives, right? And I'd have to go, yes, he can do it. Oh, really? That sounds crazy. I'm like, it is crazy, but you can do it. But no, like we had to punch out WTC terrain, and we kind of left it for the Friday, and that was a lot of work. But so we were really tired going into the Saturday. But yeah, just people's captains tended to keep rules going. I did laps of the hall all day, and my step count is unreal for the weekend. And very little questions. A lot of the stuff was minor measurements, minor rules clarifications, weird interactions. Most people seemed to be in good spirits. And near the end of the weekend, I was like, man, like, did we miss something, or did this just go that smoothly? And even the results all went through. BCP worked great. So it was a really good thing. Running events is just a lot of work, but honestly, I blinked and the weekend was over. So
from the player side, I got the same feel that it was all basically running super smooth.
Yeah. We did have to repair round 2, but that was for a different reason. I had put random ahead of wins and then swapped them. And I was like, I don't know which order I put them in. And so I just swapped them immediately and repaired. And people are like, oh my God, the pairings are crazy. I'm like, nope, it's fixed. Like, immediately. I was like,
I walked up to you to tell you, and you just told me to go away.
I was like, it's fixed. Yes. We did do random pairings day 1, which I recommend. So it was wins. So like winners play winners still, but we did the randoms to maybe avoid submarining a little bit, where somebody gets a really low score. We did have 2 big teams face each other round 2 and get a tie, which ended up making it really like exciting in the final rounds, because there was a lot of teams right near the top. It was pretty exciting.
The podium was in flux until the very last moment. Yeah.
Oh yeah. If this team loses and that team wins, it was like a huge difference. And this guy's have more battle points. And so it's pretty exciting. Other than that, we tried. There's a couple things we want to do better next year, like more visible round timers, maybe post the schedule more. This year we invested a lot in like banners and terrain and stuff like that, and I think it really helped, like add that little cherry on top of the event. But we got a list of things we're gonna work on, but it's not too big. But cool. I don't know. Any other comments or feedback while you're here?
Great event.
Yeah, ran great. We talked about terrain. I think that's sort of the overarching thing for everyone with this, but I had an absolute blast. Believe it or not, I'll be back for the next one.
Yeah, already looking forward to next year.
Yeah, we'll have to. Yeah, and like I'm not saying we're not going to go all WTC next year. It's just we'll see where we get at Capital City. That's the other thing is this event's over and we're like literally starting to plan Capital City for August. So
yeah, you're not running a 30-man store GT. Like there's a lot involved in running a 178 player event.
Yeah, in a like neutral venue, right? Like yeah. But no, it was good. So we'll go on to the Q&A. Alice, so I guess this is probably for you guys because you played in it. How do you find the ratio of higher risk attackers versus more stable defenders affect your pairing process? Is there a good ratio to have for the two types of lists?
So for us anyway, we had two lists that were kind of designed as grindy, safe scoring with maybe a little upside, and that was mine, the Death Guard, and Riley's sisters. He purposefully didn't take Valgons, the Val with the Paragons unit, and to give himself more units so that he could grind in the trenches for more points against his bad matchups, but maybe have a lower ceiling against his good matchups. The idea was that we had those two lists that could go into pretty much anything to let our big scoring lists, which are like Jeremy's Storm Ravens, for example, Devin's Necrons, that lets them be free, right, for the pairings. I think two of those is enough. You definitely don't need to go 4 defenders, 4 attackers. In fact, you shouldn't. I think 2 dedicated, like grindy 10-10 lists is enough to stabilize the back end of your pairings. And on that note, shout out to Riley who did our pairings all weekend. And there was, I could never follow his logic, but he was always right. But there was a moment in the pairings against Team Quebec for the last round where we've got like 3 pairings down. He looks at me and he goes, our back 4 are all going to be greens. And he starts putting cards down. And the back 4s are all greens. I could not follow his logic, but he was right.
Yeah, even your reds were greens in that round.
Well, sure, but I mean,
super lucky or horseshoes or
good. So you pair for what you think if you were playing yourself, like the game would go, and then sometimes like your opponent doesn't play it the way that you predict they will, and then the score can change. But in our matrix anyway, we managed to get the 4 greens in the back end of the pairings, which I thought was amazing.
It is amazing. I think that makes sense. So it's really tough. I like the stable, always get points approach. Some countries or some teams do the heavy attacker and risk. I think I always like having minimum of 2 like FU attacking armies with like 3 reds, and those 2 armies specifically need to put reds for their even like their yellows or their like minor losses.
Just
like you have to really lean into them. There's just you always pick 2 to 3 that are like these guys. We are literally trying to pair these 3 into big wins, and they can get big wins, and that's it. And you have to can't be coy about it. And I think it comes down to matrix. Like if you're taking like the Storm Raven list and they're playing against somebody that's getting like an or they put it in as an orange or a draw. In my opinion, put it as a friggin' red in the matrix. You don't want that matchup. You want them winning, right?
And we managed to do that pretty much all the time. Jeremy just went and got his big scores with his Storm Ravens. This is a list that is designed to go do that. Be an attacker into specific matchups on a player plays table and go get big scores. And if you look at how Storm Raven lists did overall in the event, Jeremy's performed much better than the average Storm Raven list. And it's although he is a great player, that's not why. It's because the pairings let him do that.
Exactly. And yeah. Sounds good. And like individual scores don't mean a lot in team events because it's all about strategy.
I guarantee you I worked harder for my 10s than some people did for their 20s.
Precisely. So yeah, I would say like don't go all safe, go a couple, 2 to 3, but you have to know those players. You have to like some players don't go for the big, like I'm not that guy. So you're not going to put me into a blue with a really risky list. It's not me. And that's just the way it is. Rickard asks, what's your plan after the Custodes, Codex, and this team event? Will you stick to the army like a hero, or you jump ship like a coward? So I guess that's at me and maybe Logan.
It was
Probably
both of us. Yeah.
So go ahead, Logan.
Jumping ship like a coward. Yep.
Yeah.
Abject cowardice. How about you?
I have a game tomorrow against Norway with the old Custodes book. I'm not jumping ship. I historically am an orc player as well. Like I play Sisters, Orcs, Eldar, and Custodes and Guard. If you look at my friends and who I hang around with, the Orcs is something that my teams generally need. So I will be doing the Orc book as well as the Custodes. Now, if the Custodes are worse, I'll probably just stick to Orcs. But a lot of what I do is kind of based on what Blunt Force needs and what Team Canada needs. So,
but you're also a CSM player, and that one's coming out too. So you're gonna have your choice.
I did not have. So I was an old CSM player when they were a Horde list. I have not had good success with the trading Rhino list. So even though I have the army and I'll play it, if the new book is like Edward's list really excited me when I read his list from the event, because I was like, oh, 3 big bricks of a curse. This sounds like my style list, but I don't know what it was. I just couldn't get CSM going. Maybe it was
Let's pin that discussion, because we should have a topic about playstyles. Because we could talk about that for an hour, and you and I have very different playstyles, and we could compare and contrast them. That would make for an interesting podcast idea.
And believe it or not, I play Custodes now. I used to be a Horde player, and that was a lot of my success was through Horde.
When I met you were playing 100 boys.
I still want to. I know. I don't know. There's something about the dice variance that makes me feel good.
Yes.
So next one, Anonymous Coward. Are you obtaining more WTC terrain for CCBB? That's a really good question, because right now we're sitting at 40 WTC tables, which would give us 80 players on WTC comfortably. So, we don't know how many people are going to singles events don't get as big as 8-man teams.
Sometimes they do. Wet Coast was 160 in Vancouver, right? Or I call all of BC Vancouver. So if it wasn't in Vancouver, don't add me.
So if we had no terrain, we could do 160 to 170 players, and then we'd have to do half and half again, right? We have to look at attendance, ticket sales, and what we want to do with the budget, right? Because we're a not-for-profit entity. We have decisions to make when we buy terrain. Like, do we want to do a higher ticket price and invest a lot more in terrain? Do we want to do a medium ticket price and keep the terrain we got and then kind of use CanHammer teams to buy the terrain? We have to look at all of those elements. So it's a good question. I don't have an answer today. There'll for sure be 40 tables of WTC terrain there. And
minimum. Yeah.
Minimum. The other thing is we're kind of looking at replacing all our neoprene mats so that everybody has the deployment zones. So that might take priority, but yeah. You have to look, like this year we invested almost $14,000 in terrain. Well,
yeah, that's crazy.
So, and it's like, as I said, we're a not-for-profit. I have a day job. Jason has a day job. Andrew has a day job, right? So it's
for people who don't run events have no conception of how expensive they can get.
Yeah. So, and we want to be more careful, because historically we've always either broken even or we've run at a loss. Like the events always break even or make have like a slush where you can carry a little bit over to the next one. But we've always run at a loss on our terrain purchasing and building in the past. Like it would be something we would just do. And we're trying to build that into the cost of the event, and it's getting a bit challenging, right? And
just the day that you and I spent at your house, like spray painting terrain, like it doesn't cost anything because we're doing it as volunteers, but it costs us a day. that is something, right? A day you could be working, a day you could be doing stuff with your family. You got to think about that stuff.
Yeah, and to get my 20 player place tables done, Francois and I built it for a whole day with Jason. We sprayed it black. And then I would get up at like 5 a.m. every day working from home, put a tarp in the driveway, put 2 tables on it, do 1 coat, go in, work, coffee break, go out, do like some other spraying. And then at lunch I would do it again. And then dinner I'd do it again. And then I would pull the tarp into my garage, let it dry overnight to cure, because you don't want to pack it in, right? And then the next morning I would pack those 2 boxes and then I would go on to the next two. And I did that for like weeks prior to the event, right? So yeah, it's I'm not complaining. I love doing it, obviously, but it's I just want to let you know it's not an easy decision. Cool. Jeremy, how did you find the mix of WTC and player placed impact army selections and builds? Do you feel it improved or hindered the event enjoyment for yourselves and other players?
I think we've already answered that one when we talked about terrain at the beginning. Yeah,
it's very mixed, and
mixed feedback. Definitely, people like it, people don't like it, so it's hard to say. Like I said, personally, I would prefer a WTC table, but I'm not fussed. Like the additional layer of strategy is also interesting.
Yeah, and like if I had a magic wand, I might have also preferred 8 WTC tables.
Yeah, but we live in the real world.
Yeah,
it did certainly affect our list decisions and pairings and everything. Like we had certain armies we wanted to have on player placed every single time, and if we could make that happen, it was great.
Yeah, I kind of like. And there was teams that historically didn't put that. I'm not making fun of it, but there was teams talking about that I was like, oh, I'm surprised you guys are playing to that level. Like that's amazing. Like you guys are putting the extra work in. So. Do you feel that the traditional defender list idea of being a grinder has been pushed back and forth of lists that can has been pushed back in favor of lists that can choose a favorable table and crush?
We kind of talked about that already too, with the deck of defender rules a little while ago.
You need both, and I think a lot of it just comes in with 8-man teams. There's only so many lists that can crush and get these green matchups like in the game. And then this edition's a lot of grinds, right? Like a lot of singles winning GT lists are winning on 11s, right? Like, what's the biggest impact you saw from going from 5-player to 8-player?
Pairings. It's almost entirely different for how you have to plan this stuff out, and the effect that a single pairing can have on the other 4 at the tail end of it as well. It's if you don't know how it works, you can lose the round with 1 card, which is pretty crazy.
What I'm amazed by is how, and maybe I'm wrong, but it feels like most teams didn't have too much trouble filling the extra 3 spots. That was something that I know we were all kind of concerned about, that going from 5 to 8s, you've got your established 5-man group. How are they going to be able to find those extra three players? But from what I heard and seen, it seems like it was actually easier than I expected.
That's my opinion. So we reluctantly up the numbers of this event for a long time. And the reason was exactly what Francois just said. And now, like, I didn't think we were going to sell out instantly. Like, that was a shock. It was a shock that 22 8-man teams signed up, like, within a half hour. And it was a shock that the teams filled. It was a shock that I only had to find 1 ringer for the entire event. We had a list of, like, 3 or 4, and I think a couple of them got on teams just organically without me having to find it. But that was a shock. And it's less work on the TOs, kind of, because there's less teams to deal with. There's less, like, that's the weird thing about teams. It's like there's only 22 tickets. There's only 22 captains. So it actually made it smoother. But of course, our 5-man weren't this big. And so there's a lot of people that don't normally play in big events. A lot of first timers playing on teams that have been there before. So
a lot of people this weekend was their first team's experience. A lot.
Yeah. So it was interesting. And I think a lot of my apprehension is now gone with the 8-man teams, right? And it's exciting to see kind of the transition from the olden days and when we ran the first team event in the country, and then to today where we're at, right? That's crazy. What was the coolest, most interesting list you saw at CanHammer Team, Francois?
The Vault, definitely. The Tesseract Vault, the one I played round 1. I'm sure there were maybe cooler lists out there, but of the ones I played, and right now it's the only one I can think of. I don't know that it was the most efficient way to play Hypercrypt, but it was super cool.
Yeah, I'll echo that being cool. And yeah, shout out to Nick's Thousand Suns as well with those corn conversions. That was
the prettiest one I played against. Yeah, but it was a very kind of standard-ish.
It was. Yeah, there was nothing super, like crazy.
But looks-wise, I agree with you.
Yeah. The heart and soul went into that one.
Okay, my interesting list was Edward's Chaos Space Marine list.
Yeah,
and
that was cool.
I say interesting is like it wasn't like groundbreaking in the sense, but it was a list that I look at and go like, hey, I want to play that. I want to try that out. So that's where I come from with that angle. So
cool.
I thought it was really cool. Okay, Dan, how did you find the weekend from a team's perspective? Logan, moving from a coach to a player.
Yeah, so a little history here. I have coached. I didn't play in 8th and 9th edition, but I was still involved coaching teams and effectively being the runner. Um, and I had not appreciated how much value that actually adds to a team. It doesn't seem like you're doing all that much when you're just grabbing people drinks and asking how rounds are going and chatting. But having been on the other side of that, it makes a tremendous difference. In a lot of respects, I would say being a player feels like more work, but the amount of value a coach adds is just the same. But it's relative, right? Like, is your work enabling people, or is it actually playing the game? So whichever one you find less exhausting, I guess, is part of it. I find playing to be a bit more exhausting, but also more personally rewarding. So if you can find somebody on the coach side who really enjoys the sort of administrative metagamey perspective of it, it's great. With all that said, I would gladly coach again. My team is set up so that we can have a rotating cast. We've got about 10 people involved that we want to cycle through for this stuff. So the move to 8-man has been fantastic in that regard. So if I wind up coaching at one of the 2 teams events coming up later this year, it's not going to be all that surprising, and certainly very welcome from my side.
Yeah, and on that point, we did make a mistake this year. Not a mistake, but there's something. We only got 8 awards for each team, and we regretted not getting 9 to recognize that coaching. So we are going to rectify that and order an award for the coaches, the teams that had coaches that placed. But I think moving forward, we're going to go to 9 awards just to show that importance, as Logan said, of the coach and how valuable they are enabling the other players. And we'd like to. The other thing we did this year is we didn't charge any of the coaches for food. That was kind of a last minute thing, but we wanted to. We thought about it, and then we were like, well, we'll just pay for that at the event, so that way it's like more inclusive, right? So we had talked about it, and then, it takes time to come to these decisions, but yeah, I think that's something that's very important. So how are you, Francois, feeling about the NTL in 2025?
Okay, so some context here for people who are not aware. The NTL is the National Tabletop League, which is an organization out of the US, but that combines a bunch of team events in Canada and the US into a larger circuit. So Imperialis Grande Croisade in January that Bruno ran was one. CanHammer Teams is one. Breathweapon Gaming's is one in June. Starter Snotlings will be one in September. And all of these team events have a rankings table. Spoiler alert, Blunt Force Trauma is currently at the top of that rankings table. And they basically, at the end, there's a National Tabletop League Championship that people that qualify for are invited to, which is super exciting. The problem for us is that it's in mid-July in Tennessee. And given the timing of WTC, I think it's going to be probably impossible for us to go. We haven't had that conversation, but I don't think it's going to be possible, which is annoying. That's just a timing thing. We're going to be in full WTC prep mode. I don't think we'll be able to go to that, but I'm not completely closing the door. But as an event and a circuit, it's great, and I think it adds an extra little bit of pizzazz to the team events, because now you can see your rankings evolve throughout multiple team events. So if your team goes to many events, you can compete against other teams who also go to many events, and they're doing it as a Nilo ranking. So it's actually not, you don't need to go to all that many, because they're doing team v team elos. And so if you only go to 2 or 3, that's still going to be a significant enough number of games for your elo to be representative of your team, and you're not going to be at a significant disadvantage versus a team that's gone to like 6, right? So I think that's really cool. If you want to find out more about that, you can just go to nationaltabletopleague.com. That is the URL.
Full disclosure, I'm going.
Oh, you're going. You've decided you're going. All right, let's have that conversation off air.
Yeah, this is our year, buddy. It's not this year, but yeah, this is going to be our year. Okay, slate predictions. Who gets the best / worst? Pick top 3. Logan, you want to take that away?
I gotta think on this one. I would love to see some tweaks to CSM to bring them back up maybe a little bit.
They have a codex coming in 2 months. They're going to get 0 changes.
Yeah, that's true. They're probably not going to get much. Necrons could probably use some adjustments.
Please,
I don't
yes.
want to say sweeping nerfs or anything, but they could use some adjustments. I think there are things that can be fixed around Hypercrypt specifically for it. Other stuff, a lot of the game feels pretty good right now. I wouldn't complain about
Storm Raven. Admech and Deathwatch barely exist as armies, so maybe they need a little bit of help. The Storm Ravens, they could probably use a bit of an adjustment. The thing with Storm Ravens is their power is fairly narrow in that they need the right table and opponent, but when they get it, it does feel completely oppressive. You play against that, and you're like, there's literally nothing I can do. I just lose.
I think they just it's only really with the Dark Angels that they're really over the top. So I would just think like if you can up their points by 50 each, it just removes a couple more elements from that list, right? Maybe that does nothing, but I think tough one though, man, because they're
already a horde.
They're already a horde. You lower their points, they're just going to be crazy. Like
I think they need a fundamental rewrite, unfortunately.
Yeah, which is tough because they just got the book.
I know.
Yeah, I hope Custodians have a points drop on a lot of units based on their rules.
Yeah, but you know, you can't turn Custodians into a horde army either. Like this, I don't know.
50 guys isn't a horde.
Yeah, it was strange to see I mean, we know why this happens, but like the Codex points for everything are actually higher than the points right now for Custodians while getting dramatically worse. So even if it's just keeping them where they were, that's still going to be better than what the book has. But we'll see. But yeah, I think Necron's Storm Ravens, if there are some tweaks there on the point side, I think will be great. If there is
for Space Marines, there probably needs to be a look at everything related to Ironstorm. It's a little strong.
Yeah,
Ironstorm has some really crazy stuff. Yeah. I mean, that's all a hot take. I didn't prep for any of this.
The game is in a decent place though, so I don't expect sweeping changes. Probably just like a tap to Necrons and a few things here and there.
Yeah. And certainly pulling Custodes down from where they are now helps move a bunch of other armies back up, right? So that's going to be a fun shift to see as well.
Well, if they don't touch Necrons, Custodes are their predator, right? Mm-hmm. So Necrons could be the next big faction. I hope they don't do much to Eldar, to be honest.
Eldar's in a pretty good space,
boost. But I think like Eldar just suffers some fundamentally overpowered units that points don't really fix, and so I would like to, if they change maybe the way D cannons or some of the those things work, and then maybe they could even give Eldar more points, but maybe that's terrible.
It's their data sheets are so ridiculously powerful that it's real hard to Goldilocks them with points.
The data on them is so interesting too. So a very brief tangent, because Eldar's at like a 52% win rate or something right now, which sounds super mid. But if you look at the 99th percentile, like the Liam VSLs and those folks, it's like a 90% win rate. And you know, at some point you're playing against the player, not the army for it.
And then you have to ask yourself the question: are you balancing for the top or the average?
Yeah,
and that's a game design decision that Games Workshop has to do.
Yeah, because Eldar, like, really, if you just play them to score, like, and then you win. It's almost crazy, but Okay, well, I think
high skill cap.
That's it for Q&A. Thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks for attending CanHammer Teams. If you're still listening, you know, we appreciate you, everybody in this community, and you know, thanks Francois, thanks Logan for coming on the podcast today, or your podcast today, and I appreciate you guys for doing it when I was gone. So have a great one, everybody.
Cheers. Bye bye.